Okay, hello everyone. This is Ben Jackson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the IPA. Thank you all for joining us today for what I know is going to be a very good and timely presentation. A few housekeeping items here before I introduce our speakers and we get started. First, we will share the slides to all of those who are interested, and we will be recording this. So if you want to go back and review something, we will be posting this so that people can do that. Also, if you have questions, there is a chat box and a Q&A box as part of the Zoom platform. We encourage you to ask them in those two spaces as they occur to you, and we will take them either during the presentation as they go with the flow, or else we will take them at the end, and if we need to, we will follow up with anyone who's got unresolved questions via email. So today we have SpringFour, and SpringFour is a company that helps financial services providers help their customers. And so in this day and age, with the pandemic and all of the resulting economic fallout from that, it's become even more important than ever before to think about not only how do we help our customers on the day-to-day basis, but also how do we help them in a crisis. And so today, Rochelle Gorey, I apologize, who is the CEO and co-founder of SpringFour, and Katie Jacob, the VP of Research and Impact at SpringFour, are here to present some recent research that they've done and talk about some of the things that they are seeing. And so the goal here today is to have a little bit of a conversation to talk about why we are not sort of helpless, even though we are in a crisis, in terms of helping our customers, and how helping our customers keeps them as our customers. And so, Rochelle, Katie, let me turn it over to you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ben. Happy to be here, and thanks everybody for taking time out of your probably busy days to listen and learn more about the work that we're doing, especially during COVID, and how we're assisting the financial services industry to help their customers who are experiencing financial challenges. So we have some really exciting research that we want to share with you today. But first, I want to just give you a little bit of insight into our company, what we do, and the why behind what we do at SpringFour. So really at the heart of our company is the belief that when consumers are experiencing financial challenges, it's because something is happening in their financial lives that makes it impossible for them to pay and save. So we want to do everything that we can to help address the root or the underlying causes behind those financial hardships. And when we do, we get people paying and saving again. So we've built an entire platform around local financial health resources, and we're working with industry players to make certain that they are able to help direct their customers to local resources that can really help them reduce household expenses, increase their cash flow. And as you might imagine, since COVID hit in March, the work that we're doing has become exceedingly important, necessary, and more financial service industry players are turning to SpringFour to help communicate to their borrowers, to their customers, that there are solutions and local service providers that can assist. And when they do, they're finding that it's good not only for their brand, it's good for their bottom line, and it's even good for their employees. And we'll dig a little bit more into that later in our talk today. But that really is the core of SpringFour and what we do. So how does SpringFour work? So we started our company all the way back in 2005, prior to the financial services crisis of 2008, because we saw way too many families losing their homes to foreclosure because they didn't know where to turn for help when they needed it most. We also were working with large financial institutions and servicers and really understood that when you have a large portfolio of homeowners or loans, it's really hard to understand and know who the local helpers, who the local experts are. So we thought, let's build a technology solution that allows those connections and resources and referrals to be made quickly and easily and efficiently. So essentially, SpringFour is a proprietary database of vetted and curated resources, and we offer that to our clients in two different ways. We have two products. We have our professional tool, S4 Pro, which is really utilized at a call center or at a branch to allow your customer service agents to connect your borrowers with local vetted financial health resources. And then we also have a direct to consumer tool called S4 Direct that our subscribers utilize, and they brand that. They typically co-brand it along with SpringFour, and that sits on your consumer facing website. So that's our digital solution, and we're seeing just a huge amount of usage and desire to utilize our direct tool today as digital solutions have become more and more important in this age of COVID and the pandemic. So both of those tools can work really well together to provide quality referrals to consumers in need, and it helps demonstrate as an institution that you are able and you want to be able to be in a position of providing assistance to your customers. So a little bit more about SpringFour and why we're able to work with the financial services industry. So as I mentioned, we're providing curated and vetted resources. And as of today, we have over 18,000 curated and vetted resources that spread across 30 different service categories. So if you think about a person's household budget and all of the things that a person might be having trouble affording, we most likely have a resource to address that need. So whether it be help reducing prescription drug costs, utility assistance, help with job training or employment resources, childcare resources, financial counseling, we have 30 different categories. So we're really a one-stop shop, which is extremely helpful in this day and age when people are across the board experiencing financial challenges and reduction in income. So it's really helpful to have a wide variety of categories that can reduce expenses in multiple different areas in a household budget. We also have built up data in over 575 cities across the US. We also have state and national resources. So that means no matter where your customer lives, they will be able to find a resource through SpringFour. To date, this year, we've made over 2 million referrals, demonstrating that consumers are definitely in need and are looking for trusted, recommended referral sources. And why I mention that is I'm sure everyone on this call is aware that unfortunately, during a pandemic, there's a lot of scams and unscrupulous things happening out in the marketplace. So when you partner with us, we want to make certain that your customers are getting referred to organizations that have been vetted. So first and foremost, the only organizations that appear in the SpringFour database are nonprofit and government resources. And our team is independently vetting and curating those resources according to track record, reputation, capacity to assist, funding levels. We're making sure that all of the information in the database is up to date and accurate. So we keep track of address, phone number, website, changes in programs. That's extremely important today as demand is very high for services. So we're making certain that everything is up to date as possible. And we've also, since COVID, we really want to make certain that we are able to assist as many companies and consumers as possible. So we have increased our tech team so that we can do very quick deployments with subscribers. So we've taken that from 30 to 15 days, which is pretty remarkable in the industry that we work in. That's because we don't do any direct integration. We don't have access to any of your consumer or loan information. So we're deemed a low risk entity. And once we get through vendor compliance and risk, we can turn around and develop our solutions for you in 15 days or under. Also, SpringFour solutions are available in both English and Spanish, which has been very helpful for many of our subscribers. So this just really gives you a sense of just how broad and how robust our platform is. So
Michelle,
I'm gonna, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in here for a second because you mentioned something that I think is interesting. So you've made 2 million referrals so far this year, people to different kinds of aid. And you mentioned that SpringFour launched in 2005, which means you went through the 2008-2009 financial crisis. How does the level of referrals compare? What can you tell us about the scale, say, of this crisis compared to the last one?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think this crisis is definitely very different than 2008. That was really housing focused, and it was really focused on things that weren't done right in the industry. And so this is a situation, the global pandemic, I do not believe has left anyone untouched. Whether if it hasn't affected you personally, you most likely know somebody that has lost their job or is not working as many hours, or unfortunately, had COVID. And those impacts have been significant and huge. It's very widespread. And so our response needs to be widespread, right? Like, I think that this is a time for the industry to come together, to step up to the plate and really do everything in their power that they can to make certain that their customers have what they need to overcome whatever financial challenge that they're facing. And the financial challenges that people are facing is really to no fault of their own. Right? Like I think it was March 16th here in the Chicago area is when we went into lockdown, and, the next day people were feeling the financial impacts of that. So it's much different. We're seeing the industry rapidly turn to SpringFour. They want to be of assistance. They know it's the right thing to do. And so we have seen our deployments and the number of subscribers in this, past few months just really accelerate the use of SpringFour. Also, in 2008, we were a very young company, but, fortunately for us, we have 15 years under our belt. We've built up a track record and a reputation, and we're trusted by major financial industry players who know that they can trust us to get the job done for their borrowers and for their bottom line.
And Ben, I would add too that I think we'll talk about this more when we get into the trends and the research, but in this crisis, what we're seeing is that customers and families are really wanting help and assistance from their financial service provider, which might be a little different than what was kind of happening in the last crisis, because again, how widespread the issues are and how basic the need is. And just to put the 2 million a little bit in context of last year, for all of last year, we had 1.1 million referrals, and we're only looking at 2 million just through August of this year. So it's really exploding due to the pandemic and more partners working with SpringFour.
Yeah, and that's a great segue to introduce Katie Jacob, who leads our research and impact at SpringFour, and she is going to share today some results of a survey that we did, and also just looking at our own internal data, the numbers that we have on referrals and what that tells us about consumer needs. So Katie?
Thanks, Rochelle. Yeah, we'll get into what we're seeing at SpringFour from a trend perspective, what our clients are experiencing, and also some work that we've done to just try to understand what some of the most impacted households, low and moderate income households, are experiencing due to COVID. So I'll start just with something, I don't need to read the slide. I think everyone is very well aware of the widespread nature of the pandemic and how it's impacted the financial lives of people across the board in this country, from high levels of unemployment, even folks who have kept their jobs, losing income, losing hours, losing their health insurance because of a job loss, having a difficult time paying their mortgage or paying their bills. So that I don't think is news to us, but what we wanted to do at SpringFour is delve a little bit deeper into some of the, again, more impacted households and ask them some specific questions about how COVID has affected their financial health, and then how they're thinking about what their basic needs are and where they would like to get information to help them save and pay their bills. So we commissioned a survey of a representative sample of low and moderate income households earning under $50,000 a year to do this survey work. And so this slide just is an overview of some of the main findings of how COVID is impacting people. And I think this is similar to other things that you've seen from some other nationwide surveys, as far as, the high number of people who feel that due to the pandemic specifically, they're having a tough time paying their bills. 2/3 of our respondents are concerned about being able to set any money aside to save for emergencies. We made sure to ask some very open-ended questions in this survey to not try and prescribe how this is affecting people, but to really find out, how do you feel about what has happened with the COVID pandemic? And one of the questions that we asked was, what is your biggest source of stress? And it could have been anything, that folks said. And when we looked at that, over a quarter of people said the number one thing is whether or not they're going to keep their job. And so that, I think, impacts everything else. In some ways, this crisis is an unemployment crisis in addition to a health crisis. And that's leading to issues of financial insecurity for a lot of households who, again, feel that they are going to have a hard time paying their bills, specifically their credit card bills on time. But that something that we'll come back to over and over is this basic necessity that folks are having a hard time buying food or paying their light bill, which is different, again, than a specific housing crisis or something that's happening in one area of the economy. So this is, again, just to reiterate what Rochelle talked about. One of the things that has helped us meet these needs that we'll talk about that we found through our survey work is that SpringFour has always really been set up to help people through a moment of financial crisis. This is a different type of crisis. No one could have predicted that this pandemic was going to happen, but that we didn't have to pivot that much when this happened. We just really had to focus on the areas of greatest need and continue to do the work that we were already doing to help people through a financial crisis. And what we recognize is that, thinking back to the last slide, of folks are having a hard time paying their bills, and that impacts the companies who need for people to be able to pay on time, who need to be able to keep their customers, which is what we're talking about today. And we also recognize it's really stressful. It's a really stressful time for employees, for all different types of folks in every industry, but definitely in the financial services industry, who are seeing people struggle in ways that they probably haven't before. Again, we asked people about what their largest areas of concern are from the impact that the pandemic has had on their family. And we see here that people are finding it really difficult to save, to pay their bills on time, to stay current on their rent or their mortgage, to keep their job, to afford basic necessities. And what that means is that people are really focused on, and I think this is related to the stimulus. We'd have to get into this a little bit more to find out exactly what that impact is. But from some of the clients we've spoken to, but also from this research that we've done, we see people are focused on trying to save, on trying to pay down their debt. They recognize, as we'll talk about a little bit more later, the long-term nature of this for them. So people are decreasing their spending and delaying their purchasing because of the pandemic. So to pivot a little bit away from that survey, as Rochelle said, we have a lot of data about what our clients, customers are needing right now and what the usage is. And what we find is that the bottom line of this pandemic is that it's really uncovered how many families, how many households need help right now maintaining their shelter, paying for food, and affording basic necessities. If we look at what the top referral categories are, and I focused on Q2 here because that was a really acute time of the pandemic when everything was kind of coming to a head. We added some brand new categories that exist because of the pandemic. We have a COVID food category, a COVID financial category, which gives people access to general financial assistance, and also a COVID health category that is, again, specific to the pandemic. between those three categories, we're normally seeing about 50% of referrals, 40 to 50% of referrals happening in those three categories that were brand new to the pandemic. And I think one of the things that tells me from a research perspective, and I would love to do so much more research on all of these things because that's what I like to do, but that in the past it was not the case that food was the number one category. There are folks who are finding themselves needing to go to a food bank or something very kind of basic, having trouble paying the light bill, that might not have ever been in that situation before. So this is really kind of a widespread issue that's affecting people in ways that they might not be used to, even if they had a relatively high level of financial insecurity. The ability to pay for food has not necessarily been, something that a lot of people have had to focus on. And so I think that's why we see the high level of demand.
Okay, before we leave that slide,
Sure.
one of the things I'm going to ask you to do is forecast a little bit.
Okay.
We see the demand right now, but when we were all talking and preparing for this, one of the things we talked about is winter is coming, and so are the holidays. And so when you think about, these are people who are asking for help today, and unless something dramatic happens, which I suppose it could, but I think we're in this situation for a little. What do you foresee happening as, will utilities go up as things get colder? Will some of these needs start to shift? Do you anticipate more, concerns about healthcare, that kind of thing? Where do you think people are going to start to face more stress?
No, I think that's a great question. I mean, we are seeing, some of the trends. I think that the heating and utility costs demand has already started to go up, frankly. That's moved up a little bit in this quarter. Employment services, I think, is going to continue to be in the top, 2 or 3, as I don't think that the job situation is necessarily getting any better for folks. And some of what we've really been paying attention to, and we'll be putting out some work focused on this, is on the housing side. We've seen a big uptick in a focus on rental resources as some of those eviction moratoriums have passed. And we're just keeping a close eye on whether or not foreclosures start to tick up again, though there does seem to be a lot more kind of assistance in that area right now. So I think the basics, though, are going to still stay up there as far as food and, the need to help pay for healthcare. But I think we are going to see some heating and utility and employment kind of moving up there. And I don't know if, Rochelle, you have any other theories?
I think you're right, Katie. I would just add, I agree that we're going to keep our eye on the foreclosure counseling category and financial counseling category. I think the industry has done a superb job of putting in place forbearance and payment assistance programs, but I think those are ending, those are changing, and so we're going to see, I think, a bigger increase or need for additional resources to help people through this hard time.
And we've definitely already started to see that a little bit. The foreclosure counseling category had gone way down as so many organizations responded with programs to help people and put them in forbearance. So we started to see more interest in that as those programs have been ending. So directly related to everything that we just talked about, we wanted to ask people kind of some, behavioral economics related questions about how the pandemic makes them feel about their financial health, their financial lives. And again, just kind of putting a couple of things out there. One, as the country starts to open up, whenever that happens or as it's happening now, how do you think that your financial situation and priorities will change? Do you think it'll get better? Do you think it'll get worse? And for this population of households, about half believe that their financial situation isn't going to change or it's going to get worse. And so I think there's 2 ways to interpret that, and they might both be true. Again, we have to do a little bit more research to find out which one it might take precedence, but I think one of the things that's happening here is people know this is a long-term impact on their lives. That this pandemic, even when it starts to wane from a health perspective, is just going to have long-term impacts on their ability to have a job and to really get back on their feet. I think the other thing is that, again, we surveyed fairly lower income households, low and moderate income households, who have probably always kind of been in this area of not having much of a financial cushion and not seeing that necessarily change very easily in their lives. So they've always kind of been in this area of needing more of a cushion than they know that they have. And so to get to that a little bit more, we asked, and I think this is one of the most interesting things that we found in this survey, knowing that there's been a lot of research done at the Fed and other places saying that the average family in the United States does not have enough money to cover a $300 or $400 emergency, knowing kind of what the level of the stimulus payments were to families. Let's just ask families, what do they need? How much money do they think would be useful? Not, we'd all love to be a millionaire. That was not the question. It was, if you have an emergency savings account, and we left this relatively, open. Again, how much money do you think you would need? And about half of the respondents said that they needed $4,000, not $400. And I think that relates directly to what we're seeing in this chart. People know this is not just a one-time kind of, I couldn't pay my light bill today type of issue, but I might have trouble paying my rent for the next 6 months, or I might, in order to really get to where I need to be financially healthy, I need a pretty decent cushion that I don't have access to, because, I think this question also has as its backdrop that folks don't actually have this money in their accounts. Sorry, I went ahead too quickly, but that's what they would like to have.
Is that, when you asked that question, was it just framed as how much do you think you need, or did you ask them how much did you think you need to manage all of your household expenses over a time period, or how did
we
you?
asked about an emergency savings account? So yeah, I mean, it's relatively open-ended in that it can mean different things to different people. And again, once we saw this number, which I think, frankly, we were surprised by, that I would love to delve into it more, and find out exactly what that is. Yes, so some of that is speculation, but it's people saying it's not one car payment or car repair. There's something more that is needed.
Yeah, much bigger.
Yeah, and I think it also points to the fact that now I think almost everybody realizes they could be one day away from a big financial emergency, right? Because I think in the past, we've kind of attributed something like that to being a person's individual fault, right? Mm-hmm. And now we're seeing that the entire country shut down almost in one day, and people had no options. This was not anything to do with anything that they had done in their individual life. And now they found themselves in a very dire financial situation, emergency. So I think that, to me, is part of the reason we're seeing this larger number.
No, I think that's true too. Absolutely. So I'm gonna kind of keep going into our trends and what we're seeing here. And again, feel free to send questions through that I know Ben is going to be letting us know when folks have questions. But we want to relate this to how helping people through this time that none of us expected to be living in can not only help them, but can help you retain them as customers, and to kind of talk about what we're seeing with our clients from SpringFour, and again, what we've learned from going direct to the consumer to ask what their needs are. This is, what we've been talking about this whole time, that throughout our client pool, we are seeing a huge demand for basic necessities as people are just struggling in their daily lives. And so given that, this is kind of an interesting slide. We wanted to see, or to kind of depict how the offerings that SpringFour provides, as Rochelle described at the beginning, there's 18,000 resources. We have almost 600 markets, 30 categories, and really the ability for different types of clients who we work with to cater to the specific needs of their customers and what they're seeing from people. Now, again, this middle part of this Venn diagram shows that everybody kind of across the board is having to provide these basic services to folks because that's what they need right now. And we serve many different types of clients. We just have a couple of examples here on the slide. That in addition to that, there are a lot of ways to focus what your customer needs. We, compare, for example, a housing counseling agency that's still providing legal assistance and kind of foreclosure help and help with ways to pay your rent. That those are kind of the focus areas that we see with those types of clients, where you might have a large bank or a different type of lender that is saying the number one thing we're seeing that our customers need is access to help getting a job. And so there are ways that we work with you to cater to what you're seeing and what you're hearing from folks, and we can kind of help you understand what that is also and say, here's what we're seeing from a trend perspective, and now how can you kind of hone that in for your customer base. So while we are seeing, just general trends that go across the board, there's a lot of ways to make this specific to the companies.
Katie, let me, while you've got this slide up, I want to delve a little bit deeper and then ask you a question from the audience as well. But
okay.
One of the things that I think we kind of want to make clear, right, is that the customers are asking their providers for this help,
yes.
right? And so in other words, how are you or how are they, your clients, referring people? How do they know that somebody needs this help, for example?
And I think we'll get into this a little bit more, and Rochelle can can jump in here as well. But our team that works directly with our clients is very specifically engaged in talking to folks about what that need is. Again, kind of looking through all of the data that we have for what the top areas of demand are right now. As I said, those 3 categories that continuously we see 40 to 50%. So we will be sharing that information with everyone and saying, this is really what we're seeing, and this is kind of a suggestion that we have. But also that we know that companies know their customers and kind of what their pain points are, and are hearing that in the call center, right? They're hearing kind of what that is. And I'll have some slides that really show how customers do want this information from the financial services companies that they're working with. But that, I think, is kind of a short answer. And Rochelle, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just add that since COVID hit, our subscribers that were already working with us were in a really fortunate position to be able to communicate to their borrowers and customers that they wanted to help during COVID. So they shifted the SpringFour Direct tool onto their front and center, a lot of times on their homepage, on their COVID-19 assistance page, so that we were able to move their application front and center. And that was a great way for them to communicate to their borrowers that they could find assistance through their company. And then also the second way that SpringFour is presented is around financial health, financial savings messages. So you really can position it in a positive way, looking for ways to save. Almost every single person doesn't mind looking for savings. And so those positive messages, those feel-good messages about financial health and wellness and looking for ways to save is a great way. And then certainly when a company utilizes our professional tool, whether it's an outbound collection call or an inbound call, those agents are trained to listen for why behind someone's inability to pay. And what it does is it has the effect of turning them into this empathetic person that that we're really changing the tone and feel of collection and loss mitigation calls, and the borrower feels that and they understand it and they appreciate it, and we have lots of data on that. So it gives an agent who otherwise was really just a matter of like, okay, we need your payment. Where is your payment? When can I expect it? To, okay, I understand you're having some payment challenges. Are you interested in receiving some referrals for assistance? And then they're able to make those referrals, and it really changes everything. And we'll get a little bit more into that later.
And so one of our attendees, sort of prompted by this slide, asked, what kind of client companies are you looking to work with? And are there new segments that you want to enter?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, we really started out in the mortgage space, in mortgage servicing, and how do we help lenders who are experiencing high rates of delinquency and mortgage foreclosure. But we've really become a broader financial health company in that we want to work with any company who is interested in either helping their customers or their employees with improving their overall financial health, because when we do so, we know it's good for the individual who's having financial health challenges, it's good for the company, and it's good for the employees, and it's certainly good for the overall industry. So we're really interested in a new market segment. We just started working with some employers the beginning of this year, so even pre-COVID, but we want to help employers provide financial health opportunities for their employees. We're looking to enter into the student loan industry, in that working with student loan servicers. We all know that people have excessive student loan debt, and we think just in the same way, if people are having difficulty making that student loan payment, they can achieve savings through SpringFour. And even if they're not having a difficulty, how great would it be to help them reduce their overall expenses so they can either, accelerate their student loan payments, or be able to buy a home, or adopt additional financial products.
And that really leads directly into the next couple of things that we're going to talk about, as far as what consumers and families are looking for from their financial service providers in particular. So, based on everything that we know about what the demand is for resources and what we're seeing related to the need, we asked a series of questions in our survey about whether or not households who are experiencing these needs for resources know where to go for help. And what we found is that the overwhelming majority of them did not know where to go for help. They were interested in receiving services and resources, but they didn't know, where they could go to find help in reducing their expenses, or paying for food, or getting a subsidy for their utilities. There's a smaller number of people who were familiar with these services, which is great, but directly related to that, so where are these customers, households, families interested in getting this information? And, we really wanted to understand, kind of talked about this at the very beginning, that through a crisis like this, or in general, how do people perceive their relationship with their financial service provider, kind of broadly defined? And we asked about, kind of several different types of financial service companies that folks work with. And we got an overwhelmingly positive response from people talking about their bank, their credit card issue, or other types of financial service providers, that they would love to receive information, guidance, support, and resources from their financial services provider when they're in a time of kind of acute need and need access to resources. At the same time, we wanted to understand, outside of a time where you really have a need and you need to be able to pay your heat bill, as Rochelle said, everyone could use a little bit more savings. Everyone could use a little bit more of a financial cushion. So we asked if people would be interested in in kind of receiving this type of information in a positive moment in their relationship with their financial service provider. So they applied for a loan or got a new account or just kind of established a new relationship. Would they be interested in that time? Just kind of getting general information about how they could save. And we find here that about 60% of people said, yeah, they would like to be able to do that. And so again, that means it's not in the moment of crisis even necessarily, but I'm about to enter into this financial relationship, whatever that means, with a payment service provider, or I'm getting a loan, or I'm getting an account. This person, this organization knows something about my finances. It would be great to get some additional help from that organization. So I think that's really, again, this is another page of statistics that's really important and impactful for SpringFour, because it just reinforces the business model of what we do and why we work with the companies that we work with, and that we really think there's an opportunity to be a great help to people who just need help for different reasons, and their financial services provider can be that organization. I think this is one of my last data slides before I turn it back over to Rochelle. This is just to reiterate that what we've seen with the pandemic is just an explosion in demand for our referrals. And so we go through the last 6 quarters here, and you see the exponential increase. I think that speaks to both the acute need that people have for resources that will help them through this crisis, but that also we're seeing so many more companies that recognize this as a need, that they should be engaging with us and helping their customers in general. And we expect that even as the pandemic hopefully starts to wane, that these numbers will continue to go up because companies are recognizing that they can play this role in people's lives. And that leads me back to, I think I'm pivoting back to you, Rochelle, to talk about some specific ways that happens with SpringFour.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. And I was just thinking about that last comment you made, and I think we're so inspired and so excited by the response that we've had since COVID hit. And I think what that tells me, and it tells our team at SpringFour, is how far the industry has come. And we're at a really exciting moment in financial services, because the industry recognizes financial health and how it is so important to everything that we do as consumers. And back in 2008, when the financial crisis happened, there wasn't that overall understanding and desire, I believe, to really figure out what was behind people's financial challenges and coming up with ways to assist them. So I think we've come a long way, and it's so exciting to me to see so many companies adopting financial health, financial wellness activities, and then wanting to provide this sort of assistance for their customers. So I wanted to share a little bit more about our actual response when COVID hit. I touched on it a little bit before, but we certainly recognized right away that this was going to be an opportunity for our company to shine and to help as many people as possible. And in order to do that, we wanted to be able to deploy and work with companies that were interested in onboarding SpringFour as quickly as possible, because every day that we weren't assisting that company meant that more customers were not getting access to information and resources that they needed. So we increased our tech time, or decreased our deployment time, so we could bring our solutions to more large scale institutions. And we absolutely did that, and we're delivering now in under 15 days. But also, as soon as COVID hit, our team, we banded together over the phone remotely, of course, and we knew from our experience of helping people through just regular financial challenges that our resources and assistance was going to be needed. And so we also knew that things were rapidly changing. So we decided to build out 3 COVID-19 specific categories based on what we knew to be true about when people experience financial challenges, and that they were going to need help and direction to finding food savings, help and direction to find financial resources, And then because this was a public health crisis, we knew they were going to need information around healthcare, around testing sites, all things COVID related. So our team got really busy, and within the first 10 days, we had already curated over 300 special COVID-19 resources. No one else in the country was doing so. We saw a lot of companies responding in a really great way and putting up links to national resources. But where our approach is different is we are really trying to drive people to resources right in their own backyard, in their neighborhood. So local resources. And I'm proud to say this actually needs to be updated. We did the slide deck a week ago, and we are already up to 18,000 resources that we've total resources, but we've put together about 5,000 COVID-19 specific resources. It's really important to our subscribers that we do that because we're keeping all of that information up to date and accurate. Things are changing very fast, and so our data team is looking at our records on a weekly basis to ensure that everything is up to date as possible. So we're really proud to be a helper in this crisis, and really humbled by the organizations that have turned to us who know it's important to provide resources to those that are struggling. So I think, you know, we all get a good feeling when we help people, but, you know, that's not always enough, right? We need to prove out the business case and how we're creating impact at a larger scale in order to attract clients and to retain those clients. And I'm super proud of our track record. We have over 90% retention rate with clients who choose to work with SpringFour. And the reason for that is we absolutely help create impact for them. And we're not doing it in just one area. We're doing it in several areas. Many of our partners refer to working with SpringFour as a win-win-win, which is very exciting and validating to our team. So a couple of things to note here. Absolutely, when you address the underlying cause behind a person's delinquency or lack of payment, you do see improvement in repayment rates and loan performance. To me, it sort of makes common sense, right? I mean, for the vast majority of Americans who are behind on their bills, there's nothing worse. People don't want to be behind on their bills, and when we can help connect them to assistance and outside resources, they absolutely get back on track with their payments, and our clients are seeing significant improvements in loan performance. Additionally, this figure here around SpringFour has shown with our subscribers that customers are twice as likely to engage in foreclosure prevention efforts or loan modification efforts after receiving SpringFour referrals. I think this figure is going to become really significant and important as we move farther down this crisis and we see more and more, unfortunately, families shift into later stage delinquencies and foreclosures. So again, getting people the help they need and addressing that underlying cause is going to be key to getting them back to recovery. Also, one thing that we do with all of our subscribers is we continue to be your partner after we deploy with you. And so we consistently survey we work with our subscribers to survey their borrowers and their employees to get at what do they think about SpringFour, how has it impacted their roles, what do people feel after receiving SpringFour referrals from their lending institution. And we're proud to report that over 90% of users believe that, or they feel better about that brand. They feel better about that institution that helped them in a time of crisis, that provided them with a referral. So I think that's really significant. And it's also important to remember that making a referral is not a complicated thing. It's simple. And doing this simple act of making assistance available to your customers is super beneficial and comes back in many ways to validate and to prove your value to your customer. And then when we founded our company, we certainly didn't set out to have an impact on the actual or the individual agents or employees that use our tool, but happy to report we are absolutely doing that. We survey call center and agents with all of our subscribers, and they consistently report feeling better able to provide improved customer service as a result of having SpringFour. And this gets at what I mentioned earlier about really changing the tone in conversations that are occurring in call centers, now remotely, of course, but we're still having that impact. And agents report that they get to resolutions more often and quicker as a result of having SpringFour in their toolbox. So, you know, all of these things really combine to help create the ROI for management and leadership to work with SpringFour. And then on this slide is an example. We work with BMO Harris Bank. We did a case study with them, and they've been tracking the impacts of SpringFour on their customers. And really what this talks about is that they have seen the amount of delinquent balances decrease over time as a result of SpringFour referrals when compared to those customers and portfolios that did not receive SpringFour referrals. Now I'm happy to report BMO Harris is utilizing SpringFour across all consumer loan portfolios because the results were so significant. And in this corner here, and you'll all have a copy of this slide, so I don't want to go into it, but essentially BMO Harris is seeing all of the impacts that I just spoke about on the previous slide. So it's been a true win-win partnership, and the case study is on our website, and you can definitely go there and download it and take a look at it. And then Katie put up here some testimonials, but I think, and I'll let you, read these on your own, but what I really want to drive home here is that the simple act of making referrals creates a very substantial ripple effect on the consumer and their overall financial life or life. We've definitely seen examples of people who were out of work and received a job because their call center agent had SpringFour in their toolbox, and they were able to make a referral to a local employment or job resource. So that's profound. And I think it's important for us to all just take a little bit of, a step away a moment and really realize that when you do make referrals, we have the power to really change people's trajectory and where they're at in their financial lives. And that is why SpringFour and our team continues to do what we do each and every day. And we have lots of these testimonials. So, it makes us all feel good, but the business impacts are there as well.
And I think especially this this last one, what I think this really points to, and why we've done some of the outside survey research that we've done, is that some of the impact can be just in the fact that people need to feel that they have a partner, a helper as they're going through some of these issues, and a lot of the time people feel very isolated, and you can kind of see when you have the opportunity to read through this last quote in particular, just how much it means to people to feel that there's somebody on the other end of the phone who really just cares about whether or not they're having a tough time, and that there is some help out there for them. And so I think that's what we're doing with the partners and the clients that we work with. We're offering that that partnership to people who really need it.
Yeah, and we actually deployed a couple of months ago with a very large credit card provider, and they have been doing listening reviews of all of the calls where SpringFour is offered, and they said that their customer experience scores have been soaring as a result of their agent's ability to provide SpringFour referrals. So it's really exciting to hear how we're helping impact the industry and people's lives. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today and share the work that we're doing, and we're happy to answer any questions.
So we've got a couple of minutes left, but I'm going to take advantage of some of this time to ask a few questions. In that, one of the things that I would ask you to comment on is there's been a lot of looking to do something. put a moratorium on evictions or foreclosures and that kind of thing, looking to the government for relief. And it seems to me that one of the things that you're saying here, perhaps not explicitly, but that I think deserves some attention, is we don't have to wait for the government, right? We can start helping people now. Does that sort of seem fair? And do you think that people, when I say people, I mean people in charge at banks and financial services providers, should be moving quickly to do that?
Absolutely. I'll let Rochelle speak to this too, but you know, what we're seeing just through the work that we do every day and talking to our clients and to customers, from what we're seeing from the research too, when you think about what it is that people need right now, they need it right now. I mean, you know, they need help affording their food. They need help paying the rent. And they're kind of looking to whoever might be that partner for them to help them do that. And so I absolutely agree that there are a lot of opportunities, and we see people are hungry for it. They would really like to be able to work with their bank, with their payment service provider, with, you know, whoever it is that might be able to help them.
Yeah, I agree. And I think also what's super important is that we need to remove the stigma that is often attached to having a financial crisis, having a financial emergency, having to look to outside resources. That's always been a goal. And one of the reasons that I founded SpringFour was to remove the stigma behind financial challenges. That's why in one of Katie's slides, you know, 60% of people don't know where to turn for help when they need it, because we've created this situation where it's bad to ask for help. And what we're trying to get across, and I think when companies utilize SpringFour to provide referrals and assistance, we're making that routine. We're making that okay. To me, we're not normalizing it, but in a way we are. Like, it's okay. We understand things do happen. And when they do, look for the helpers. That's why there's these nonprofit and government resources available, because it can happen to you. And so that's our overall goal, removing the stigma and making certain that people can get help when they need it. And I absolutely believe that people deserve to be directed to help when they need it.
And also, I should say that, you know, again, when we did our survey, we focused on kind of the low and moderate income households, but we're seeing, you know, there's an across the board need for a lot of different types of help. There always is, but especially right now. And even, you know, families who are in a fairly good financial situation still find themselves, you know, struggling with different things as all of our lives have changed, and folks have kids at home, and there's just so many different things happening that are different, that affect everyone of all income levels.
Well, you anticipated my question there, which is that this is sort of anticipating all different, or affecting all different income levels. And I was curious about that because one of the things that you pointed out was certainly the people that you surveyed, not all of them knew where to go for help. But it seems to me that if you are a person who has traditionally not needed that kind of help, you are even less likely to know where to start looking for those resources.
No, that's a really good point. I think that that's true. Yeah, again, there are people right now who have never been in this situation before where they needed outside assistance and might really not know where to go.
And I just want to add too, if I was a financial service provider, I would want to be directing my customers to these vetted, curated resources, because if you just Google financial assistance, watch out what you see that comes up on your screen. And so really, you know, that again was one of the main reasons we created our company, was we knew there were plenty of unscrupulous actors out there. And unfortunately, that's often where people turn, or those are the resources that become the most visible. And we wanted to make certain that we could direct people to organizations whose mission it was to truly assist them and to put them in a position for success, not make them in a situation that was even worse.
Well, and we talked a little bit about this in our preparation, but helping people now at this time of crisis will be important down the road for companies, because you had talked about helping people now could mean, for instance, their loans don't go into foreclosure, or they're not, being evicted, they're not having credit score dings, that kind of thing. And so you're essentially setting them up for better, more profitable relationships sort of in the future. Can you talk to that? And maybe, I don't know, I realize we didn't sort of talk about this before, but did you see any of that, for instance, coming out of 2008, 2009, where you helped set people up for future success?
Yeah, I mean, well, any person that we help avoid foreclosure or, an auto repossession or dings on their credit and inability to get access to credit cards is a good thing, right? So that's what we're doing every day, helping prevent that. And so that's the role that we want to play. And as an institution, when you're seeing significant declines in delinquencies, that means you're retaining that customer, right? And hopefully that customer has a sense of increased loyalty to you and to your organization and what you've been able to help them overcome. Unfortunately, we don't have any hard data on this, but we have heard time and time again, and there is this feeling that when a person is behind on a certain bill and, let's say it's a credit card and that credit card company helps them, they are much more inclined to move that payment to the top of the pile because they want to pay you back. You have assisted them. So yeah, I think it definitely goes to not only customer engagement, but customer retention.
And I think on a basic level too, it shows, the interrelated nature of all of this. So, if through some of these referrals and resources, someone is able to keep their car or get a job or stay in their house, they need to be able to do those things in order to pay, their financial service provider, in order to pay off their bills, in order not to, have to incur a bunch of fees because they're not able to pay. And so it's all related. So if what they really need is, to be able to not worry about the rent right now or not worry about this, then that enables them to work in a proactive and positive manner with their financial service provider. And I think that's something that we see continuously, even though the direct thing that you're doing might not be helping someone pay this credit card bill. That person can only pay that bill if these other things are taken care of. So.
Well, we are at the top of the hour, and it seems as though we don't have any more questions for the audience. So if anyone has any follow-up, certainly please feel free to email us. You can email me at bjackson@ipa.org. I want to thank Rochelle and Katie for presenting with us today. Thank you both. And
Thank you.
Following up with the deck and the research. So thank you all again.
Thanks so much, Ben.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.